Everyone thinks that empires fall because of war and military defeat from armies attacking them. But one of the most powerful empires in history didn't collapse from armies attacking its borders. It collapsed because of its money. A currency quietly losing value year after year until the entire system broke down completely. And the worst part about this disaster, most people didn't even notice it happening as it occurred gradually. They went about their daily lives not understanding what was taking place in the financial system. Because what happened inside the Ottoman Empire wasn't just a financial mistake or bad management. It was a slow, invisible breakdown of the entire financial system. A system that looked stable and strong on the outside when you looked at it from the surface, but was rotting from within in fundamental and deep ways that affected everything. And by the end of this story, you'll understand how a currency crisis can destroy an empire completely. Why governments keep repeating the same dangerous pattern over and over throughout history. And why the same forces might still be shaping your money today in ways you don't realize or understand. To understand how it all began and what led to the collapse, we need to go back in time, way back, to a time when the Ottoman Empire was one of the richest and most powerful forces on earth. Its cities were thriving and prosperous. Its trade routes connected continents and made it wealthy. And at the center of it all, holding everything together, was its currency, the Akçe. Small silver coins that were simple and plain, trusted by traders everywhere. Stable and reliable. At first. But here's where it gets interesting and important. The strength of the empire depended on something most people never thought about deeply. The silver inside the coin itself. Not just the coin as an object, but what it was made of inside. Because back then, unlike today, money had real weight to it. Real metal. Real value that meant something. And that meant one crucial thing: if you changed the metal inside, you changed the money itself and its value. And this is where everything started to shift and change. As the empire grew bigger and more powerful, so did its problems and costs. Wars became more frequent and expensive. Armies became larger and required more supplies. Expenses exploded beyond what the empire expected. And suddenly, the empire needed more money than it actually had available. So what did it do to solve this problem? It made more coins. But not in the way you might think it would. Instead of finding more silver mines and extracting additional silver to back the coins properly, they reduced how much silver was actually inside each coin they minted in their mints. This practice is called debasement in economic terms used by historians and economists. But no one used that technical word back then. To ordinary people using the coins in daily life, the coins looked exactly the same as before in appearance. Same size and weight to the eye. Same stamp and markings. Same authority stamped on them officially. But inside, hidden from view, invisible to most people, less value was present. Less silver. Less actual wealth behind each coin. And no one saw what was coming next as this continued year after year. At first, this strategy worked in the short term to solve immediate problems. The government paid soldiers with the new coins that had less value. Funded wars and military campaigns that were expensive. Kept things running and functioning. Everything seemed fine on the surface. People weren't complaining loudly. The government had money to spend. But slowly, over months and years of this practice continuing, something started to happen that couldn't be hidden. Prices began to rise throughout the empire in every city. Bread cost more money to buy. Goods became more expensive than before. And people started asking questions about why everything was getting more expensive. But here's the twist in the story that most people miss completely. It wasn't just simple inflation happening naturally. It was something much deeper and more fundamental at the core. A loss of trust in the currency itself from the population. Because once people realized the coins were worth less than before, their contents changed, they started reacting differently. Merchants raised their prices to compensate. Workers demanded more pay for the same work. And some people did something even more dangerous to the system. They stopped trusting the currency entirely and looked for alternatives. And this is where everything changed dramatically. Because money isn't just metal and coins. It's belief. It's trust. And once that trust cracks and breaks, the entire system starts to shake. To understand how bad it got and how far the collapse went, we need to look at what happened next in the Ottoman Empire. The government didn't stop debasing the currency when people complained. It kept doing it. Again and again and again. Each time they minted new coins, they put less silver inside. More coins in circulation. More spending by the government. But no one could see the long-term effect at the time because it was happening slowly. Because in the short term, it felt like growth and prosperity. More money in circulation meant more spending. More economic activity. More trading. It looked like prosperity and wealth. But underneath the surface, hidden from view, the actual value was collapsing rapidly. Then the tipping point came when it couldn't be hidden anymore. Foreign traders, especially from Europe, started noticing that Ottoman coins weren't worth what they used to be. They refused to accept Ottoman coins at their stated value, or they demanded more of them to equal the value of other currencies. Trade began to suffer greatly. Confidence in the currency dropped even further. But here's where it gets even worse and more tragic for the empire. The empire didn't just face internal problems from its own currency collapse that it created. It started borrowing money desperately from outside. From European powers who had accumulated wealth over centuries. From banks and financial institutions looking for profits. From investors looking for returns on their money. And at first, it seemed like a solution that would save the empire from complete ruin. Fresh cash flowing in. Immediate relief from financial pressure building. But no one saw the trap they were walking into with their eyes wide open. Because borrowing money doesn't solve a broken system fundamentally at its core. It delays the collapse. It postpones the reckoning. It pushes the problem into the future. And every loan that came with it had strings attached that limited freedom. Interest payments that had to be made consistently. Conditions attached that limited what the empire could do. Control and influence given to the lenders over the borrower. And slowly, gradually, the empire began losing more than just money from loans. It started losing independence and control. Foreign powers had leverage and power. They could make demands and conditions. And the empire had to obey to keep the loans coming. And this is the pattern most people miss when studying history. It wasn't one bad decision that caused the collapse. It was a cycle that repeated. Spend too much money. Debase the currency to get more money. Create inflation as a result. Lose trust in the currency. Borrow money from foreigners to fix problems. Repeat the cycle. Sound familiar? Because this pattern didn't end with the Ottoman Empire centuries ago. It's happened again and again throughout history since then. Across different countries. Different times. Different currencies. But always the same core problem: too much spending by government and not enough real value behind the currency. By the 1800s, the Ottoman Empire was drowning in debt that it couldn't possibly pay back ever. Its currency had lost significant value compared to other stronger currencies from Europe. Its economy was unstable and unpredictable. And foreign powers were no longer just lenders providing money to help. They were controllers of the system with real power over decisions. And then came something almost unbelievable that shows how far things had gone and how desperate the situation became. The empire created an organization to manage its debt and try to salvage what it could. But this organization wasn't controlled by the empire itself or its leaders. It was controlled by foreigners. European creditors who had loaned money and wanted it back. This system was called the Ottoman Public Debt Administration, and it represented a loss of sovereignty. And it had one primary job that took priority over everything else: to collect money directly from the empire itself before anyone else. Taxes, revenues, income. Government income went to pay the foreigners first before anything else. Think about that for a moment carefully and really understand what it means. An empire, once one of the most powerful in the world, so deep in financial trouble that outsiders were collecting its money directly from the government. And this is where everything changed forever fundamentally, because at that moment, the Ottoman Empire wasn't fully in control anymore. Not of its money, not of its system, not of its own destiny. It had become a debtor state controlled by creditors. Now pause and think about this history and what it teaches us. Because this isn't just about the past and history classes. Look around at the world today and what's happening. Currencies are no longer backed by silver or gold like the Ottoman coins were. They're backed by trust and belief, by governments making promises, by central banks managing the system. But the core system underneath hasn't changed fundamentally at all. Money can still be created by governments. Debt can still grow beyond what can be repaid. Government spending can still exceed reality and actual value behind the money. And when that happens, we see the same signals appearing that appeared then. Inflation rising, currencies weakening against other currencies, debt expanding beyond what can be repaid. But here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to hear or talk about. Most people don't notice it at first when it happens. Just like in the Ottoman Empire centuries ago, it happens slowly and gradually, quietly, almost invisibly to the average person, until one day. It doesn't. Until the problem becomes too big to ignore anymore. So what actually destroyed the Ottoman Empire was at war with other powers, politics, and internal corruption. External enemies attacking? No, those were just the final blows that finished what was already broken. The real collapse began much earlier than the final wars, with something far less visible and obvious. The moment they started weakening their own currency deliberately. The moment they chose short-term relief and solutions over long-term stability and sustainable systems. Because once money loses the trust of the people and other nations, everything built on top of it becomes fragile and vulnerable. Governments become fragile. Trade becomes fragile. Power becomes fragile. Even empires become fragile. And that's the part most people never realize when they study history. Money isn't just a tool that you use. It's the foundation, the base. And when the foundation cracks and breaks, the entire structure eventually falls apart. The Ottoman Empire didn't collapse overnight in a single dramatic event that everyone could see. It faded away slowly over decades and centuries. Piece by piece. Coin by coin. Year by year. The decline was gradual. And by the time people realized what was happening and understood it, it was already too late to fix. The damage was done. The foundation was broken. So the real question isn't just about studying the past and understanding history for academic purposes. It's about right now, today. In the present moment. If an empire that once controlled vast territories and accumulated wealth can fall because of its currency, what does that say about the systems we trust today? What does it say about the money in your pocket? The systems governments maintain. The trust we place in institutions. The Ottoman story teaches us that no system is permanent or guaranteed forever. No currency is forever safe from decline. No empire is untouchable and beyond destruction. And the factors that seem unimportant at first, like slightly less silver in a coin, can compound over time and eventually destroy everything that was built. This lesson applies today more than ever before.